Hey guys, hi, how you doing? It's Ray here from City Fan TV, and I'm joined by Bernard and Colin. Colin is our football finance expert. That's why he's on the channel today. And Bernard is a keen fan, going to his about 50-odd games last season. Crazy. I don't know how he manages to do it. He's
stuck in the middle. I feel claustrophobic, guys.
I will soon sort that out. We'll get.
I feel like I'm on one of those buses, those shuttle buses in Istanbul.
Oh no, don't go back. Don't go back there. Hours of fun, I hear. So what we're going to do today, we're going to talk about the future, or what's happening right now and the future finance-wise with City. You know, we're at the end of the season. I think City's accounts, if I'm right, are they up to the 30th of June, Colin?
Well, it was Friday, of course, as we're recording this, which is...
Well, you'll have the figure then, Cole. You'll have the figure now. It's a couple
not yet. They've got 9 months to release this. As I well know, having to do my accounts, I think mine are going to be submitted last Friday. Anyway, that's gone. But we want to have a little think about, because there's rumours that there's going to be some big numbers popping out, the turnover. Obviously, City have won the Premier League, the Champions League, the FA Cup, had massive crowds. You know, whatever anybody wants to say, you know, I think our average home gate was about 200 shy of capacity. So it's a massive uptake by the wonderful City fans. So I want to get an idea, Colin, what City's accounts might look like in terms of turnover, what we might be able to spend this summer. You know, it looks like we're making some sales, how we're looking for FFP based upon a few sales that you think we might make. And then finally, we'll come on to what a City worth. So I'll start off, Colin. What do you think we're going to see in City's accounts?
Just ask before you do that. Am I right in thinking we were the highest last season?
Yes.
Yeah. Was it about 618?
617, 6 something like that. Yeah.
Okay. Just so I know what we're comparing against with a reasonably successful season last season.
I should say the record is United hold the record with 627 million turnover in a season, and they're looking to break that this season. I'm not sure how, because successful. You don't get that much for winning the League Cup. But anyway, they're about 640 million. So that's the kind of, and they went out of the Champions League in the group stages, didn't they? Or
because they one, didn't they? Yeah.
So anyway, yes. So there were rumours. I think Mike Keegan, Daily Mail was putting out our turnover could break the 700 million barrier, and that raised a few eyebrows, but actually that's quite feasible.
Has it been done before?
Sorry?
Has that been done before?
Not in
anybody?
In the Premier League. Barcelona have once.
Right, okay.
A couple of years ago, but I mean, look what happened to them since. So Barcelona, I think, got 720 million or something. We'll probably just break the 700 million. It's quite feasible because we know roughly what we'll get for winning the Champions League, winning the Premier League. So for winning the Champions Leagues, I reckon we're looking at 125, 130 million prize money, and that comes from various things. Obviously, the further you go in the competition, the more you get. If you win it, of course, you get the most. English clubs get a lot more than other clubs because of the size of the TV deal, and we qualified as champions, which again gives us an extra bit of the pot. So I reckon we'll be looking at somewhere in the region 125, 130 million prize money for the Champions League alone. We know the Premier League, that's going to be in the region of 160 million, something like that. So we're looking at nearly 300 million. When you add the FA Cup in, and all the other stuff we do, we're looking at nearly 300 million TV money alone.
Yeah.
Alone. Now we know match day income is going to be about 360 million. About 60 million, which makes it
wishful.
Yeah, puts that up to about 350 million, 360 million, and there's commercial income, so that probably will be in the region of 340, 350 million. So it's quite feasible that we'll just break the 700 million pound barrier, which will be a record for English clubs and the second highest revenue in football history. So that'll propel us to the top of the Deloitte's league. Now, at the other, of course, there's expenses out of that, but what we'll be able to take into account when we look at the bottom line is because the accounts finish on June the 30th, the transfer window doesn't open to July the 1st. We're looking at all the transfers we did last summer. Raheem Sterling, Ferran Torres, who else?
Gabriel Jesus, Zinchenko.
Yeah. So all of those will come into this account, and we will have made. Sterling would have been very little in the books. Zinchenko would have been very little in the books. Gabriel Jesus. I've seen one suggestion that we will be able to bank show a profit on transfers of somewhere around 150 million, maybe even more. So that's huge. That again, bigger than we've ever done before. So with a record revenue 700 million, let's say our expenses are 650 million, and we're banking 100. We could be showing. We could. I don't know. We could be banking a profit in the region of over 100 million. So now FFP has changed. What we didn't mention in previous videos was it's the last year, I think, this season of the old FFP based on the really poor 3-year history. Now it's going to player costs, which is better. It's not great, but it's better.
Mm-hmm.
So basically, you take your revenue, you take your profit on sale, and you offset your wages, player wages, agent fees, player amortization against that. And that latter group has got to be next year no more than 90% of revenue. And then it's 80%, then finally it will settle at 70%. So obviously we'll hit that with ease, I imagine. Obviously wages will be higher because we'll presumably pay quite high bonuses, but I still think we're looking at a very, very hefty profit. And of course that feeds into what you can spend. Say the rules have changed. I'm not quite sure how that will affect transfer spending, but we've got the cash, we've got the profit, we've got that kind of cushion that we've got. And you look at United released their third quarter accounts, and they're still showing a loss, even on record revenue. They're still potentially going to record a loss, maybe a small one, but maybe a small profit. But our accounts for this year should be very spectacular indeed, and that of course drives transfer spending. What we can spend depends on the cash. It depends on wages. Depends on amortization. There may be a lot. People forget the impact of players leaving on the wage bill, and that has an impact. So obviously Gundogan's gone. He's off the wage bill.
Yeah.
There's talk of Mahrez going, another one off the wage bill. And if we can get fees for people like Mahrez, but I don't think anyone wants Bernardo to go. But if we get a decent fee for him, again, he's kind of not showing up much in the balance sheet. So again, it's another load of profit to add in to the next year's accounts, or to the current year's accounts now.
I mean,
stuff.
So I mean, in terms of player sales, like you say. It might be just worth briefly mentioning how the player sales work, because for argument's sake, if we paid 60 million for Mahrez, he's got 2 years left on his contract. It'd be useful to very briefly talk about amortization and explain how that works.
Yeah. I mean, we've been over this before, but basically, if you buy a player, Mahrez for 60 million, 5-year contract. Basically, the expense of that is 12 million, 60 divided by 5. And that's what goes in the accounts as an expense, amortization. So, and that comes on.
What happens when you extend a contract then? How does that work out? So if Mahrez signed for 5, extended for 2.
Let's take Mahrez example. Let's say he's been there 3 years. So 36 million's come off his value. He's in the accounts at 24 million with 2 years left on his contract. If we extend that for another 2 years, that's a 4-year contract. So we divide that 4 into the 24. So it reduces, so extending contracts reduces amortization. It can halve it. And I think with the way FFP is going, there'll be a lot of pressure on players to renew contracts or be sold. So there'll be none of this hanging on till 6 months before the contract expires.
Like Jack Grealish, for instance, it might be an idea this season to extend his by 2 or 3 years.
Yeah, so 100 million, 20 million a year. Jack Grealish will be in at 60 million. If we extend it for 3 years, it's down to 10 million a year. So and it all comes off the bottom line. So it's 10 million a year that we've kind of decreased our expenses by.
Well, it's why Chelsea are offering
and contracts.
It's why Chelsea are offering 6 to 8 year contracts to their players. We just got signed another player on an 8-year contract.
Yes, and this is one way of doing it, but there's a downside to that. Well, UEFA have stopped it now. So as of from July the 1st, you can only amortize, however long the contract is, you can only amortize it over a 5-year period. So that's one thing. And the other thing is, by offering a long contract, you tied into that contract.
Yeah, so Chelsea now won't be offering anyone an 8-year contract, will they, from now?
Well, they can do what they like, but they can only amortize.
It doesn't make any sense for them to offer anything more than a 5-year contract.
There's more reasons than just finance that they offer a long contract. If you offer a 20-year-old an 8-year contract, like you say, it ties them in. You can have more control over their wages in the future because, hey, you've got a contract. After 3 years, if someone wants more money,
but we also have struggle to sell them.
Yeah, you can sell them, or you got a bigger
because you're tied into a longer contract.
And when you sell them, you can probably charge a little bit more. If someone's got a year left on the contract, we've seen people going at the moment for a little bit less than they would do if they had a 3-year contract, for instance. So I think that makes a difference, and there's lots of things, and it also gives the player the confidence and that they're really, really wanted.
I think there's a downside to it as well, because we talked about amortization. So let's say you buy a player for 80 million on an 8-year contract, 10 million a year. At the end of 3 years, there's still 50 million on the books. Now you've got to get 50 million to show a profit, just to break even.
Yeah.
And you might not do that. Yeah, you might not. So the 5-year contracts, the value go down quicker than the longer contract.
But these long contracts are for the short term. It's a bit perverse.
We don't know how it's gonna turn out. But also, you've got wages as part of that contract, and you look at, there's a lot of players at the bigger clubs. Look at United; they can't sell the players because they're on big contract, big money. No one's prepared to pay the wages, and they've got to pay the wages. There's talk about them paying to get Harry Maguire off the books. Now, the longer the contract, the more you've got to pay. So, there's very much there's no upside now, and I think there's potentially a lot of downside.
Yeah. And we've heard recently that Arsenal bought Declan Rice and Kai Havertz, and they're paying an eye-watering £675,000 a week on wages for those two players. I mean, that's just, I can't comprehend that. It's like 2 players, £32.5 million. And if that, I said on one of my shows, if that was KDB and Phil Foden, or KDB and Ilkay Gundogan, or KDB and Rod, you'd accept that because they're worth it. But clubs and
it's never done anything, has it?
Yeah,
he scored against us, of course, but in the Champions League final.
That's all.
He's no KDB. He's not an Mbappe or Haaland, and that sort of money. I say, if there's a flop at Arsenal, how are they going to get rid of him?
Yeah,
if they've done it on an 8-year contract, and after 2 years has been a complete flop, they've got 6 years worth of wages to pay.
Yeah. Like Nicolas Pepe, Arsenal fans don't want to go there either.
Yeah.
I mean, my final question then, Colin, would be: we've seen this protracted sale of Manchester United, if it ever is going to happen, and I think they're over £5 billion now, which the Glazers must be cock a hoop at those numbers. Chelsea was sold for, over 3 billion quid. So that was plenty. And people said, oh, Chelsea wasn't worth that much. It's worth what someone will pay. Looking at City, looking at some fabulous sets of, hopefully with some fabulous sets of accounts this year and next year. I think next year could even surpass this year's. Because we're going to have the Club World Cup in there, Super Cup. And if we get to the latter stages of everything else, there'll be all that and all the extra sponsorship we're going to get. Even though the wages will go up for the bonuses, we'll get extra money coming in because, hey, we've hit targets, we've won all these trophies.
A £70 million deal, a $70 million deal with OKX, haven't we, over 3 years?
So that's
phenomenal. Shirt sleeve deal.
Yeah, it's phenomenal. So what do you think City's valuation should be, given all our success on and off the pitch?
It's a very hard, as you know, Ray, you're in the accounting game. It's a very hard one to come up with a value. There are certain ways you can do it, discounted cash flow, revenues, whatever. The valuation for United looks insanely optimistic because United are actually an easy one because their shares are quoted on the New York Stock Exchange. So we know that their worth, according to the share price, is just under £3 billion, about 2.75, 2.8 billion pounds. So the Glazers looking at $3.5 billion. So the Glazers looking at $6 billion. It sounds insanely optimistic because there's a big downside with United. You've got to spend a lot of money. There's a debt to pay off. And I think one of the reasons the Glazers are looking for so much money is potentially there's a debt buried in the Cayman Islands in the accounts there that they took on. Anyway, that's their problem. So United, the share price, you're looking at a premium of something like, 60-70% on the share price, which is a big one because United probably they're not even generating cash. Actually, they're making losses. Their operating expenses exceed their operating revenues, and you think, well, where's this valuation come from? City, actually, again, there's a good marker because when Silver Lake bought in, they paid, what was it?
$500 million for 10%.
$50 million.
$500 million for 10%.
$500 million, yeah, for 10% of the equity. Well, that values us at $5 billion.
People said that was crazy, but still.
When did they buy that? When did they take that?
It was about 2018, 2019?
A bit after that.
So still 2 or 3 years ago.
Yeah.
Obviously, as a club, we've obviously moved on as well.
Yeah. So you could say what's City's value now? $5 billion, $6 billion. If United are worth $6 billion, then City.
Well, I'm just going to mention the Silver Lake deal. That was in 2019. They bought 10% in 2019.
That was 4 years ago. We hadn't won a Champions League.
What they've done since, in September, I think they increased it to 18%.
They took some of the Chinese shareholding, didn't they? Yeah. So I think they own pretty well. Sheikh Mansour owns 76% now. Silver Lake owns 23%.
And the Chinese
are a fraction.
Media Capital.
So Silver Lake clearly believe in us. And they're a hard nose.
Well, when China Media Capital bought in, they paid about 200 odd million for about 14%. So they valued City somewhere around over $2 billion, I think. Yeah. And now that's pounds. Now we're talking $5 billion, and I think it's only going up. I must admit, I thought the Silver Lake investment was. I thought they paid too much. Yeah. But what do I know? They're the experts. And
of course, if it was shares like United, obviously as soon as Pep hands his notice in, they'd drop, wouldn't they?
Yeah. Well, United shares were in the doldrums. They dropped below what the Glazers actually floated at one point, and then they announced they were in takeover talks, and of course they shot up. And they varied a little bit since, but I mean that's been going on 6-7 months and not come to a conclusion. When you think about Sheikh Mansour's takeover at City, it was done in like weeks. Wasn't it? Done very quickly. And it, you know, it's very difficult to say to judge. I can't see what the upside is in United. If you buy it, spend 6 billion, presumably that includes paying off the debt. I don't know, but you then got to invest a lot of money in rejuvenating Old Trafford, if you like, or building a new stadium. Carrington's a bit out of date. You've got to spend money on that.
Where does I mean, just a slight aside, obviously the new convention centre, they call it in America, the new arena, and obviously the extension of the North Stand, which is now planned. I've seen lots of work going on, whether that's connected with that or something else, but some of his bars been knocked down, etc., etc. I mean, where does that money come from? Does that come into FFP, or is that to one side because it's development of the ground rather than the team?
Well, it comes into FFP, yeah, I believe, because I think we, City or CFG, have a 50% stake in that arena. So, yeah, we can bring them. I'm not sure how it will impact City themselves, but, yeah, the hotel that's being planned and the... So yeah, that impacts.
Well, the cost, does that go against us, though? Does that limit us spending money on players?
No, it's nothing. The cost is nothing to do with us. Right. It's Oakview Group are building the stadium, so the costs fall on them. Whether CFG have contributed to the cost, we've also got a lot of the money will be going into the New York Stadium in Flushing Meadows, and again that will bring money into CFG because they won't be paying out whatever they pay rent to Yankees to play there. but yeah, the arena should be a big money spinner, but I'm not quite sure what the impact will be on City's revenue. But we can, under the FFP rules, we can take revenue for non-football operations in the environs of the stadium. Obviously, we've got to own it. Yeah.
But that are we talking about the arena is going to be a huge impact?
Potentially, the revenue from the arena, and I say I don't know. I'm just guessing, but potentially revenue from the arena, yes, could be included in the City's account.
And the hotel.
And the hotel, definitely, yeah.
Yeah, it's separate. We could be sat here talking in 3 years' time and saying that 700 million, that was nothing. We're on $1 billion now.
It's change, yeah. We could potentially be talking about £1 billion turnover in a few years. Yeah.
So as we finish, you heard it here first. We are predicting, well, some of us are, that Manchester City will be the first.
We might be insanely optimistic, of course, because Pep leaves.
No.
Or we get, we'll be the wealthiest team in the North West Counties League when.
Hey, we'll still be there. We'll still be there watching.
Yeah, we'll still have 30,000 watching every week. Guys, thank you so much for another wonderful finance video, and I'm sure probably towards the end of the end of July, early August, before the new season starts, we know a little bit more about what's going on at City with players coming in and leaving. We might revisit this topic just to see, talk about profits on sale of players, because I think this summer could be one of the.
One thing we forget is, of course, the academy players, and we make a nice little term from selling academy players.
Well, I mean,
5-10 million.
I mean, that might be a video in itself, but reading that, we sold, for instance, to Southampton, we sold 3 players, I think, or 3 or 4 players. Gavin Bazunu for about 12 to 15 million quid, the goalkeeper. We sold them Romeo Lavia for about 4 million. And there was another kid, not Eze, Edozie or something.
Edozie, yeah.
So I'm here reading today that Liverpool look like they're going to go for a Lavia and could be 30 to 40 million quid. So that might be another video just to say, why are we missing out on, we sold it for 4 million. Yes, we've got a 20% sell-on clause. If they do sell him for 40 million, we'll get another 8 million. Are we happy with 12 million on a 40 million pound player? I know. Maybe that's for another video. But thanks a lot, Colin. Thanks a lot, Bernard.
Pleasure. Good to speak to you guys again.
Sorry.
Great.
Yeah.
Good to speak to you guys again.
Oh yeah, thank you so much. A good
I
time.
was just hoping Colin would give us a tune on the piano to send us off.
I was going to ask him about that. Is that a sign of it?
I am no Alexis Sanchez.
Oh, thank you so much, guys. And if you are new to the channel, please think about subscribing and hit that bell icon so you're notified as soon as new videos come out. We'll see you around, Blues.